Happy New Year, everyone. Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to head out to Santa Anita to preview the second of a couple graded stakes races on Saturday. But before we do, we want to remind everybody about the New Year's sale currently happening at shop.drf.com. 15% off when you use the promo code NY2025, and that'll roll all the way through January the 6th. Take advantage right now, and you can save on all of your favorite daily racing form products. We head out to Santa Anita for the Grade 3 Las Flores, both races this weekend that are stakes races. On Saturday, you have strong hands from Bob Baffert, no surprise. He'll have Pleasant here as the 3-5 morning line favorite, coming off of a really good effort in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, where this horse had the lead just a few strides before home, ends up finishing third, beaten only a half length. And then you have Richi, the Chilean bred, who was a multiple Group 1 winner in Chile and won Group 1 races all the way up to 1.25 miles. Certainly has talent. Will be making the second U.S. start for Bob Baffert. So those two, David, seem like the top two. I really had a tough time trying to get creative and get around those two.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call a 7-horse field a match race, but it does kind of set up that way on paper between the two Bob Baffert runners, or maybe it's just a morning workout since they're coming from the same stable. But yeah, 3-5, 8-5, and then the third choice on the line is 12-1, and can't really quibble with that. I mean, when you handicap the race, it looks that way on paper.
Yeah, trying to get to and make cases for some of those double-digit horses was tough. They're just not in the best of form right now either. Let's look at the pace projector, see what Timeform US thinks. It's always key in a race like this. So Pushiness, maybe Pushiness can make some of the Baffert runners work a little bit harder, maybe get some clearance out there. She's a talented Calbred, but when she stepped up and faced open company, hasn't quite been as impressive as when we've seen her kind of dominate the Calbreds, but certainly like Santa Anita and will probably be the fastest in here early.
Yeah, and it's not like there's a shortage of speed in this race. I agree with the pace projector that Pushiness is probably the most naturally fast of those horses that want to be forward, but she is vulnerable at times when she has to go too quickly up front, and she kind of can do that to herself at times. And both of the Bob Baffert runners figure to be breathing down her neck here. I mean, Richi shows a lot of speed in her U.S. debut, and Pleasant obviously is going to be right up there on the outside. And even horses like the number 5, Don't Bring Crazy, have shown speed on occasion. So I don't think this is going to be the kind of pace that Pushiness can back down.
Yeah, you have a horse like Wine on Tap, who they tried to get really aggressive with, and her best races have been forward, and she also draws the rails. So yeah, in this smaller field too, you can see a lot of them trying to hold that position early on. Let's head on out and meet the field for this one. We'll start with Wine on Tap. Let me know where. I'll head on over there. She broke her maiden in the debut back in June of 2023, but since then just has not really progressed. In her last starts, we've just, we haven't seen her actually within like a couple lengths since the sorority back at Monmouth Park. She just has not been close and has not been competitive, but she is stakes place. She needs a real form reversal in this spot, David.
Yeah, she was a horse that I remember turned some heads when she was in the Todd Pletcher barn on debut all the way back at Belmont during her 2-year-old season. That was a race that I think was originally given a much higher buyer, and it was so whatever the opposite of flattered is in the subsequent months that they had to lower it all the way down to a 56. And she just has kind of been a bit of a mess since then. I mean, her last couple of starts, she's wanted to be a runoff in those races, so I get why she's turning back in distance, but she just hasn't shown the quality to compete at this level.
Anywho is grade 3 place, but really hasn't been close in her last 5 starts or so. She has faced some nice horses. You go 2 starts back, was behind a horse named Uppercase. Uppercase came out of that to win a stakes race at Churchill Downs next time out. Prior to that, back-to-back losses to Sweet Azteca, who would have been one of the top betting choices in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint had she been able to make it to that race. So going through the company, I have no knocks on the fact that she's faced tough company. She just hasn't really been all that competitive as of late.
Yeah, I mean, she had run some nice speed figures going back to 2023 and even earlier last year, but her form feels like it's kind of tailed off recently. I mean, she didn't run well 2 back when they shipped her to Keeneland, and she was facing some decent horses that day, but just was a total no-show. And then she came back to Del Mar last time, and she ran okay, but I mean, Sandy Bottom and Tamra, a couple of 3-year-old fillies, well, one of them came back in the La Brea and was really uncompetitive, that being the winner, Sandy Bottom, and Anywho was just kind of hanging on her left lead through the late stages. Just feels like a horse that might not be thriving at the moment.
Richi, the next one, is the Chilean bred for Bob Baffert. She was a multiple grade one winner in Chile. The only time she was outside the top 2 in 10 starts was her final race of the year. So you can go through her form overall. It was very good. Then comes into the U.S. In the Bob Baffert barn. This was her first start. It was in June, and she hadn't raced in 6 months. She had a fast start, 3 paths. She sat off a bit. She moved to the lead. I mean, she looked like she was going to blow by and win pretty easily, but she gets a little bit tired. She just had a tough time putting away the other pace of Tom's Regret. Eventually, she'll wear that one down, David, and finish second, but she wasn't able to hold off Chismosa in that one. So we see her now with a little more foundation. Just sort of strange when you have a horse who's off for 6 months, shows up in June, then off for another 4 or 5 months, shows back up. That's not a positive, but you know that Bob Baffert can get these horses ready to rock. And if you look at her works in the morning, December 12th, was working with Kinza 2 back and was pretty impressive. Worked with Citizen Bull on December the 28th. So has been working with tough company to get her ready for this race in the mornings.
Yeah, I was watching some of those workouts myself. I remember watching that workout for Kinza prior to the La Brea and being concerned that she seemed to get outworked by this horse. And then Kinza, I think, finished last in that race. So maybe that wasn't flattering Richi too much. Yeah, no, I agree. It seems like she's doing well coming back for the comeback. It seems like Bob Baffert started her out at 6 furlongs, maybe as a starting point, with the idea that they would stretch her out. But then she went to the shelf again. And now it's kind of like they're starting over with her, getting that 6 furlong race back into her. And maybe there'll be a plan to stretch her out in the future because, as you noted, she was proficient going longer distances in Chile. And that one time that she put in a poor effort, she was beaten by K Army. I don't know if people are familiar with that horse. He was just winning all of his races by like huge margins. He's like the flight line of Chile and is actually in the U.S. with Bill Mott. And maybe we'll see him a little bit later in 2025. But Richi is a horse that I do think has potential. I just wonder if we're going to see her best effort on this day.
Pushiness will try to get out front in here. I think that's her best case scenario if she can be forward. But as you were pointing out, we were looking at the pace projector. They have her in front, but it's not like these Baffert runners are slow. And a couple others in here certainly have at least tactical speed. So while I expect Pushiness to be forward, she's going to have some of the best horses that she's faced kind of breathing down her neck, putting a lot of pressure on her. So certainly won't be an easy task for her up front, David.
Yeah, she's got a ton of early speed, but she's primarily been effective against California-bred competition. And at this level, I just question whether she can really sustain it with those 2 quality Bob Baffert horses that drawn on either side of her. I mean, she is a horse who has run consistent speed figures, and she at least appears to be in good form coming in here, which is more than you can say about a lot of horses in this race. Just a little hard to see the winning trip for her.
Don't Bring Crazy is the next one, grade 3 placed, and most recently won a small stakes race over at Turf Paradise, going a little bit longer, going a mile. Could see her maybe being part of the early pace. She does have some early speed, and even at sprint distances. But when you're looking at her race against just Pleasant, for example, a few starts back, she was 6 lengths behind Pleasant. So she's going to have to show some improvement on that rival. And Pleasant might even have a reason to step forward off of that effort and maybe be a little bit sharper and better now than last time she faced Pleasant. So can you make a case in here for Don't Bring Crazy?
Well, I guess the case is that I could easily see Pleasant winning this race by 6 lengths, and 6 lengths behind her could be second place in here. So that wouldn't be too bad for Don't Bring Crazy. At least she is in good form coming into this race. I mean, she's coming off a victory at Turfway. I mean, that was going a mile, but she's shown that she's proficient sprinting in the past. And I don't think that they're going to be so intent on getting her forward in here, seeing the amount of speed that's in this race. So she'll probably take up a stalking position, see if she can pick up some pieces. And if she runs her typical buyer in the high 70s or low 80s, maybe she can get a piece of this.
The Judd Mott Farms runner Pleasant is now a 5-year-old with just 5 career races. She's honestly been her own worst enemy with the gaps in racing, just the long periods in between her races. She showed up in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, making her second start back after a very long layoff, after like a 13-month break. And she was so good in this race, David. She's really, really impressive overall. You see her speed figures continuing to get a little bit better each and every race. Right here, she's got the lead late in the stretch, and she's just sort of worn down. We see Soul of an Angel late, and then another one in between horses. Society kind of comes on back after being passed. So, pretty tough to knock that effort. I know when there's blanket finishes and you see a lot of horses across the wire, sometimes you're want to ask how strong that race really was, but she was facing some of the best filly and mare sprinters there, and she was right on the wire with them.
Yeah, she was kind of the wise guy horse heading into the Breeders' Cup, because there was that feeling like if Bob Baffert's running her here, he's got to expect that there's
Yep.
more than meets the eye. And yeah, she really ran a bang up race that day. I mean, to be battling it out on the front end and then still, hanging in there along the inside, coming to the wire, when so many horses would throw in the towel in that situation against the quality of competition that she was facing. Really strong effort. If she runs back to it here, she's probably not going to lose. And she's just drawn in the perfect post position outside of all that other speed, so she doesn't even need to be used that aggressively. She could just be perched outside by Juan Hernandez and play the break, see what others want to do, and just easily gradually work her way into the race. I had trouble getting past her in here.
Yeah, she's just really, really tough in this spot. We'll round out the field with Irish Wahine, grade 3 placed, an 11-time winner. But if you're looking at her last couple of wins, Calbred optional 20 claimer, Calbred optional 20 claimer, and $10,000 claimers. So just a lot softer spots than facing horses who were beaten a half length in the Breeders' Cup last time out. Just completely different sort of company that she's been facing. Can you make a case for her, David, in this spot?
I mean, she'd be like the obvious horse to pick up the pieces if she was coming in off her Chillingworth effort, but what happened the last couple of times? I mean, she got plenty of pace to close into in the Betty Grable. We saw the winner Chismosa rally from off the pace, and she just could never mount a rally. And then last time out, I mean, she couldn't have been worse at Pleasanton against a field that she probably should have been competitive with. Just kind of feels like maybe her form is heading in the wrong direction now, but she is going to be a price in this race if you think she can pick up some pieces.
Yeah, that was my problem. Those last 2 races, even if she didn't win those races, she should have been more competitive against those fields. I just would have liked to see a little bit more that we didn't. And as we get to the selections in here, I couldn't get all that creative, David. I had the 2 Bob Baffert runners on top. I think that really makes the most sense. Maybe you think Richi has some upside that's not quite there. If not, you've got the more proven runner of Pleasant. So I used maybe the better of price of the 2, thinking there could be something built in there with Richi. But yeah, you and I will both have the 2 Baffert runners on top, and just found it really tough to find value in this race.
Yeah, same thing. Probably not a race I'm going to bet. If I would do anything in this race, maybe it's trying to get that long shot. Don't bring crazy in underneath and the exacta trifecta. But for me, it was just too hard to get past Pleasant at a very short price.
Yeah, both of these graded stakes races out at Santa Anita on Saturday this weekend. You're going to probably have to navigate the Bob Baffert runners, who will take a lot of money in those smaller fields. But however you end up playing them, we wish you the best of luck.